Hi everyone, welcome to your intro to knitting tutorials. So this set of tutorials is actually going to build up our knitting skills to the point where we can make this beautiful little knotted pattern. I've made mine into a little square here, but you can actually use this to make any number of garments if you wanted to start out with a scarf, or if you're feeling super amazing after all of these tutorials and maybe you want to make a blanket or something. You will learn everything that you need to know to make this beautiful stitch. We're going to start from the very beginning, and by very beginning I mean, what do I need to knit? You're going to need yarn and you're going to need knitting needles. The very first tutorial is going to cover how to pick your needles and how to pick your yarn and how to make sure that your yarn and your needles will work well together. And then the subsequent tutorials are going to cover how to do all of the knitting techniques that you're going to need to make this beautiful project. And once you've learned all of those techniques, that opens up a whole line of different patterns and different techniques that you can try. You can use those exact same techniques to make many, many other projects. But I wanted to try something a little different with this set of tutorials so that we actually have something to work towards and we have a little finished product here at the end to show you, even if you are brand new, you can do this. I know it looks complicated. It's got some little lacy structure in there and some of these little yarn overs. We will learn everything. You can do it. Stick with it. The number one thing that I will recommend when you're learning to knit is practice. Practice, practice, practice. And then maybe after that, some more practice. This, as with any other skill or craft that you learn, is really just about making sure that you're building up some muscle memory so that your body knows how the needles and the yarn feel, how you can find your tension. So yes, practice. Don't get discouraged. The more you do this, the easier it will become. And before long, you'll find that you'll be able to make something that's even more amazing than this. You will build up the skills. You can do it. So follow along with the tutorials that are coming up. And yeah, show me your finished pieces. This is Liz at Different View Designs. Tag me on social media. Find me on Instagram and on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. That would be amazing. And I'd like to see what you guys make. Super excited. Stick with the tutorials. Number one, again, is finding your needles, finding your yarn. Then we move on to casting on, knit stitch, purl stitch, casting off, increases, decreases, and knitting in the round. If that sounded like a lot of crazy words that you have no idea what they're all about, stick with it. Start with tutorial one, work your way through, and we'll get here in the end. Have fun, you guys. So first step is to get supplies. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you want to look for if you're walking into a yarn store or shopping online, and what combination of yarn and needles or hooks you want to pick up. So I've got a couple different yarns here to show you the difference. You can see these two yarns. The gray one is super skinny and the green one is a little bit fatter. So with these two yarns, depending on which one you want to pick, you're going to be using a different crochet hook or a different set of knitting needles depending on which craft you decide to use. So if you're new to buying any of this stuff, the first thing you want to do is look at the yarn sleeve. So most of the yarns that you're going to buy in the big box stores like Michael's or AC Moore or Joann Fabrics are going to have these nice sleeves on there. If you go into a specialty yarn store, you'll still be able to find this information on the sleeve. It's just a little bit more specific to the yarn manufacturer. But what you want to look for is there's a bunch of symbols here that tell you all about the fabric. There's some wash and care instructions on here generally. And what you really want to pay attention to are these blocks. So there's, I don't know if you can see that, There is a little yarn skein shown on there. It's got a number on there, and this one says medium. So that gives you some kind of context as to what size yarn this was. Now I called this super skinny at the beginning, but this is actually a medium yarn. So there's yarns that come a lot skinnier than that one. And then these two blocks here will tell you the appropriate sized crochet hook if you're crocheting, and an appropriate size knitting needle if you're knitting. Now these are just guidelines. It'll depend on what you're making and how tight you generally keep your tension. We'll get to that in a couple more videos down the line. If you are brand new, what I suggest is to go with nothing smaller than a size 4. So these go all the way down to 1 or 0, I can't remember, and all the way up to 6 or 7. So this gray one is a 4. If we take a look at this green one, it's a little bit smaller, but you can see here that it's a 6. It's called a super bulky. And it'll tell you the appropriate knitting needles for that one. So if you're new, I say start with maybe a 4 or a 5. If you go too small, then it gets a little bit fiddly to work with. And if you get too big, it's also a little bulky and hard to manage if you're brand new. So take a look at these labels. This one, this gray one, is telling us that we need to use a size, you can see it, 5.5 millimeter or I9 crochet hook. And if you're knitting, it's a 5 millimeter or a US size 8 crochet hook. I'll provide you guys with some information about how to interpret all of that, because there's different sizes for all of these depending on whether you're in the US or UK. And yeah, so I actually like to go a little bit larger than what the package specifies. So if this says a 5 millimeter hook or a size I9, I actually like to pick up, here's my crochet hook. This one's a 6.5 millimeter and a K. It'll do just fine for this yarn. If you're brand new, I would suggest not trying to knit or crochet too tightly, which means that if you pick a yarn, you can pick a crochet hook or a knitting needle that's slightly larger than that. What that's gonna do is that's really gonna enable you to see the stitches a little bit better. And if you're new, it's really good to be able to see what you're doing until you build up the muscle memory to just be able to do it without thinking. So yeah, this is a 6.5 millimeter crochet hook. The knitting needle that I would choose for this one, where is it printed? Oh, there it is. Let's see if we can see that. This is a US 10.5 knitting needle. Again, this is 6.5 millimeters. This is a circular knitting needle. For those of you that don't know the difference, this is circular, so you can knit things in a circle. I know, tricky, right? There's also straight knitting needles. Either one, if you're a beginner, is perfectly fine. I do almost all of my work on the circular knitting needles. I prefer them a little easier. I feel like when you're not working on your work, you can just slide it into the loop here and stuff doesn't fall off as easy. But really, it's totally up to you guys what you would prefer. If you're brand new, to be quite honest, just go into the store or order online and just see what's the cheapest. Sometimes that's the easiest way to start until you build up some preferences. You'll also notice that there's different materials. So this is a wood or a bamboo knitting needle. This is a metal crochet hook. Again, this is all personal preference that you guys will build up as you build into the craft. So yeah, so that would be my recommendation. I really like these sizes. If you're looking at the 6.5 millimeter or maybe a little larger, you don't want to go too much larger than that. And I can show you here, if we look at this green yarn, since it is a little fatter, it's telling us to go with a knitting needle that's a size 13. Ooh, that's tiny. Or a crochet hook that's an N. And what I've used with this specific yarn, this is in size N or 15 crochet hook. This is a 10 millimeter here. You can see that. And then the knitting needle that I would use with this is a US size 15. You may have to trust me because I'm not sure that's going to show up on the video. Or a 10 millimeter knitting needle. Again, circulars is what I prefer. Just my personal preference. The knitting needles can get super big, and I guess the crochet hooks too. So this is a super big knitting needle. This is actually a size 19, 15 millimeter. These, once you get up to this size, makes projects really quick. So you can knit or crochet really fast. I find them a little bit bulky if you're just starting out. So you may want to choose something kind of in the middle ground. So that's why I say anything from the 6.5 millimeter and up, maybe up as high as this one, which is the 10 millimeter, are probably good for beginners. Again, too small and it gets really, really fiddly to work with. Too big and it gets a little bulky and hard to manage. So hopefully that helped you guys. If you have any questions, just reach out, let me know. Otherwise, join me for the next set of videos where I'll be talking about how to cast on if you're knitting, or how to create your foundation chain stitch if you're trying to learn how to crochet. Thanks, guys.